Sonko, the firebrand leader of the main opposition political party in Senegal, has declared publicly his intention to succeed Macky Sall in 2024 presidential race and accused the president of working with France to block his candidacy. He thus won of any form of meddling from France. Plus, after several postponements of the inclusive national dialogue, which will pave the way for the free and democratic elections and the handing over of power to civilians, opens in Jamena Church this Saturday. The stakes and limits of 2 months before the theoretical end of the transition period will be brought to you in today's newscast. Ladies and gentlemen, those are my big stories of tonight. Thanks for joining us. I am Tekewana at the anchor. We begin this day, as you heard in our lead story, that Senegal's main opposition politician, Ousmane Sonko, on Thursday announced he would be running for the 2024 presidential race, but the target who hasn't ruled out in seeking a third term in office. As you tell us more, Ewane Epole, our student journalist.
The seat of Mr. Sonko, third in the 2019 presidential elections, is no surprise for Senegalese who had kept it in mind long time ago. Mr. Sonko, 49-year-old leader of the Pastef party and mayor of Ziguinchor since January, holds a sovereignist and pan-Africanist speech, slaying the elites and corruption. He also pounded the political and economic influence exercised, according to him, by the former French colonial power and the multinationals. He declared that no one is better placed to win the upcoming elections but he and his party, adding that it is because Macky Sall and France fear his advent that their laboratories are at full speed every day, fabricating conspiracies in order to prevent his candidacy.
I say this with all the objectivity in the world. There's no one better placed than us to win the presidential election of 2024, if God be willing, and that is why we must remain focused. And it is because they are convinced of this that they have decided to put a stop to this project. When I say they, we must understand that it is Macky Sall and his regime.
He repeated that he had nothing against French people, but however, accuses Mr. Macky Sall of instigating files of terrorism, rebellion, and imaginary rape, and equally attacked the French media, which describes him as a dangerous politician.
France must have the dignity of Germany, which does not rely on any colony, and which is the first economic power of Europe. It must have the dignity of Norway, of Denmark, of all the other European powers. It must have the dignity of flying with its own wings rather than continuing to suck the blood of its ex-colonies. If this is not to like France, I do not like her.
Mr. Ousmane Sonko formalized his candidacy in the wake of the legislative elections of July 31st. The presidential camp lost absolute majority in parliament and should only benefit from a majority of one vote thanks to the ruling of an isolated deputy.
Thank you very much there, Ewane Epole. And just to tell you all that the dust is still to settle after the August 9 presidential elections in Kenya. For now, we are having a visiting U.S. Senator Chris Coons to Kenya has encouraged Kenya's outgoing president to undertake a peaceful transition of power amid the latest election crisis in East Africa's most stable democracies. Take a listen to him.
That was certainly a hope that I expressed today in talking with him, that there would be a peaceful transition of power. I commend that he is respecting the Constitution and leaving office after 2 terms. We talked some about the important role he has played regionally to help with negotiations in the DRC, to help with negotiations in Ethiopia, and I encouraged President Kenyatta to think about ways after his presidency concludes where he might continue to play a constructive regional peacemaking role. It is my understanding that Raila Odinga is going to file a court challenge to the election outcome, and I was encouraged to hear from the Deputy President a commitment to respect the process and to continue to call for reconciliation. In a recent speech he gave at the Bomas, he said, I hope to be a president for all Kenyans and to not pursue any political retribution. and Prime Minister Odinga also said today that he's calling for his supporters to be calm and to respect the process.
Chris Coons, U.S. Senator, on a visit to Kenya, talking there about the just ended presidential elections, which of course saw William Ruto being emerged as the 5th president of Kenya. Now, let's get down to Chad, whereby we are told that after several postponements, the inclusive national dialogue, which should allow for a free and democratic elections and the handing over of power to civilians, opens this Saturday in N'Djamena, Chad. But what are the stakes and limits 2 months before the theoretical end of the transition? Jigs Nabise has the explanation.
After several postponements, we are less than 24 hours to the inclusive national dialogue, which would pave the way for free and democratic elections and in handing over of power to civilians. The dialogue is scheduled to kick off Saturday, August 20, in the Chadian capital of N'Djamena. Amid intense preparations for this big come-together, one of Chad's prominent rebel leaders, Timan Edimi, who was exiled 17 years ago, has returned to the country ahead of the national talks. 67-year-old Edimi, head of the Union of Resistance Forces, had left the Central African country in 2005 and had been living in exile in Qatar for over a decade. Also, his armed group had attempted to overthrow his uncle, Chad's former president Idriss Déby, first in 2008 and again in 2019. In April 2021, President Idriss Déby Itno, who had been in power for more than 30 years and had just been re-elected for a 6th term, was killed on his way to the front line against rebel groups. His descendant, General Mahamad Idriss Déby, commander of the 5th Presidential Guard, was appointed to head a transitional military council along with 15 generals loyal to his late father. When the general ascended to power, the constitution was abrogated and parliament dissolved, with he appointed members of the government and a transitional parliament, promising a new permanent institution as well as free and democratic elections at the end of an 18-month transition, which is supposed to end in October. The landlocked nation on several occasions have been pressured by the international community, spearheaded by France and the African Union, calling on the authorities to respect the schedule. Chadians will head to the polls after 2 deadlines. First, the transitional government met with rebel groups on August 8 in Doha, Qatar, following 5 months of intense talks, and signed a peace agreement with the military government, including a ceasefire, all prerequisites for national dialogue, one that would design the future of Chad.
Let's keep our fingers crossed and wait to see what will be the end result tomorrow, Saturday, August 21, 2022. And let's get over to Zimbabwe, where the economic situation in Zimbabwe continues to be unbearable for her population as her currency is fast depreciating, backed by ordinary households into a corner. What is the daily reality in Zimbabwe? Let's follow this report.
At the Kalus, they often start off by fetching water. The family lives in Harare's Mavuku township. Rising prices and a fast depreciating currency have pushed many Zimbabweans to the brink. In addition to that, prolonged water shortages have meant that most residents of Zimbabwe's capital must source their own water.
There's no water coming out of our taps, so our life now is just to pump the borehole daily and carry buckets of water home.
If the round trips are tiring, Carlos feels his family is lucky. The property they rent has a well, and his family can hold up buckets of water to get some extra money.
This is our gold. If we are lucky, we can sell up to 12 buckets for $2 per bucket. This is how we are surviving.
Living conditions continue to worsen. Inflation has jumped from 191% in June to 257% in July. Many Zimbabweans fear the country is headed to dark times again when the Southern African nation faced world record inflation of 5 billion in 2008.
The plight of the ordinary person is such that it's difficult to really survive in this economy where prices are increasing on a daily basis.
To prevent a return of such economic disaster, President Emerson's government have introduced gold coins as a legal tender last month. The country's central bank, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, said the 22-karat coins would help time run away inflation and stabilize the nation's currency. The coins are at an average price of just below $2,000 per coin, depending on the international gold price. Many, such as Carlos, do save enough funds to face life's challenge each passing day before things turn sour for the country.
And over to Burkina Faso, report has it that there is shortage of fertilizer in the country, which threatens crops and food insecurity in Burkina Faso. Foto has the rest of that story for us.
Lean period in Burkina Faso. In the middle of the rainy season, a crucial period for field work, many farmers have still not been able to find fertilizer. A situation that worries the people as much as Isufu Porgo, permanent secretary of the Peasant Confederation of Faso. In this semi-arid country of West Africa, where more than 80% of the population lives from agriculture, soaring input prices are hitting producers hard, who are dependent on imported fertilizer for the growth of their crops. At the end of February, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the world's second-largest exporter behind China, helped to inflame the price of nitrogen fertilizer. In West Africa, where 50% of urea and 70% of potassium, an essential component of NPK product, is imported from Russia, and prices have doubled and even tripled in some markets. Burkina Faso, which has the greatest shortage in the region, farmers fear catastrophic consequences for the agricultural campaign, already seriously impacted by jihadist violence, the effects of climate change and the repercussions of the COVID-19 crisis. In the Suru Valley, one of the breadbasket of the country in the North region, they were forced with the arrival of the first rain to start sowing without fertilizer. Urea and NPK granules, the most widely used product, cost 50% to 80% more according to data from Africa Fertilizer, a market data collection and analysis initiative. Up to 35,000 francs CFA per 50 kilograms bag compared to 19,000 francs CFA before. Even if Burkinabe farmers use 8 times less fertilizer than the world average per hectare, these inputs remain decisive for the yield for their crops, which are increasingly degraded by droughts in the Sahel.
Let's get over to Nigeria to pick up this unbelievable but true story where over 20 mummified bodies, including children, have been found in an unfinished building in the city of Benin, in the capital of Edo State. 3 suspects have been apprehended and currently in police custody as investigations are ongoing. Mwanzi has the rest of that story for us.
It's a shocking discovery for Nigerians and the world at large. Over 20 mummified bodies have been discovered in an unfinished building by Nigerian forces of law and order in the city of Benin, the capital of Edo State, found in the south. Armed police officers raided the building, acting on intelligence that it was a suspected ritual shrine.
They got a tip-off that there's a place close to God's Care Mortuary. At the side of it, there's an uncompleted building that is ongoing. And when he left and got to that place with his men, his operatives under him, they now discovered that the house had some dead corpses, almost about 22, and a shrine too, some shrines.
According to Jennifer Igwebo, a police spokesperson, 15 mummified male corpses, 3 mummified female corpses, and 2 mummified children corpses were discovered at the scene just 3 miles from the city center. 3 people, all men, have been arrested following this sad discovery. A suspect apprehended claimed the building was a mortuary. However, the police has denied these allegations.
Mortuary must have basic facilities, modern facilities, for us to call it a mortuary. Thirdly, there was no signpost. A mortuary should have a signpost telling members of the public, customers, that they are open for such business.
Nigeria's security forces have in the past uncovered such shrines used by ritualists and kidnappers, but the latest discovery is one of the most shocking in recent years, considering the number of victims.
And let's talk sports to wrap up this edition of the news. In Cameroon, after the successful hosting of the 2021 AFCON, President Paul Biya has created a board whose responsibility shall be to manage every sporting infrastructure in the country for the sake of posterity. For us to better comprehend the content of the presidential decree, let's watch this report.
It is no doubt a well-calculated decision by President Paul Biya to create a special board charged with the responsibility of overseeing the organization and functioning of the national sports facilities and equipment, which government invested billions to see the structures planted today throughout the national territory. The announcement comes at a time when Cameroon prides of many sporting infrastructures following the organization of the 2021 AFCON of multiple international events and still looking forward to host more sports jamboree. The maintenance and upkeep of such architecture has been the worry of many Cameroonians, which has been given presidential attention. Article 4 of the presidential decree details the objectives and mission of the board, which is to see its use its expertise to ensure the upkeep, repair, operation, safety, development and sustainability of sports facilities and equipment, as well as specific related facilities built or developed by the state. The board shall equally have the responsibility of preparing and implementing a strategy or operational mechanisms to control the cost inherent in the upkeep and maintenance of the sports facilities and equipment, rehabilitation and renovation works on sports facilities and equipment, acquiring where necessary new equipment and materials dedicated to facilities and their modernization, and the proposing specific infrastructure development and promotion services, amongst others. The decree further states are the different specialized responsibilities under the board placed under the supervisory authority of the Ministry of Sport and Physical Education. It is therefore hoped that when the board shall fully go operational in the months ahead, those charged with such tasks shall in their own little way accompany the government of Cameroon, jealously cater for the sporting infrastructures for the sake of posterity.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for today's primetime newscast on For You Television. We want to thank you all on behalf of the entire crew for your kind attention. Until we meet again from Monday, from Harare, Zimbabwe, down to Libreville, Gabon, and Yaoundé, Cameroon. God bless Motherland Africa. Bye-bye.